Picture this. You're standing in the shadow of Tenochtitlan's great temple in the year 15 to 20 AD, and you witness something that makes your blood turn to ice. The air is thick with copal incense and the metallic scent of fear, while hundreds of obsidian torches flicker against the night sky like demonic eyes. But what draws your attention isn't the towering pyramid or the chanting priests. It's the small figure huddled in the corner of a stone chamber. A child no older than 7, with flowers braided into her hair and tears streaming down her painted cheeks. Her name is Itzel, and tonight is her last night on Earth. What you're about to witness represents the most horrifying religious practices in human history, a ritual so disturbing that even the Spanish conquistadors, hardened by years of warfare and brutality, would describe it as an abomination that haunted their dreams. Before diving into these forgotten stories of survival and suffering, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. What you're about to hear isn't just another tale of ancient sacrifice. It's the story of how religious devotion can transform love into murder, faith into madness, and innocent children into offerings for gods that demanded nothing less than perfect terror. The name Itzel might not be familiar to you, but her final hours will haunt you long after you finish listening. You are 7 years old, and your small hands shake as you touch the jade necklace around your throat. The stone is cold against your skin, colder than the morning mist that rises from Lake Texcoco, colder than the fear that has been growing in your chest for days. Your name is Itzel, which means rainbow in Nahuatl, but there are no rainbows in the windowless chamber where you've spent the last 3 days preparing for tomorrow's ceremony. The priest told your mother it was an honor that Tlaloc himself had chosen you through the sacred lots, but you see only terror in her eyes when she thinks you're not looking. The chamber where you wait is carved from volcanic stone, its walls decorated with intricate murals depicting Tlaloc in all his terrifying glory. His goggled eyes stare down at you from every surface, his fanged mouth open in what the priests call divine hunger, but what looks to you like screaming rage. Copal incense burns continuously in jade braziers, filling the air with smoke that makes your eyes water and your throat burn. The smell clings to everything: your hair, your ceremonial white huipil, even the corn cakes they bring you to eat, though you can barely swallow past the knot of fear in your stomach. Other children share this space with you, though none speaks above a whisper. There's Nikali, barely 6, whose constant crying has worn tracks through the ceremonial paint on his cheeks. Beside him sits Ziania, 8 years old and trying desperately to appear brave, though you can see her hands trembling as she clutches a small obsidian figurine of Tlaloc. The priests chose all of you for the same reason: your tears. In Aztec belief, the rain god Tlaloc demanded the tears of children to bring the life-giving rains to the crops. The more you cried, the more precious you became to the god, and the more certain your fate. Let's step back to understand how you arrived in this nightmare. The year is 1520, and Tenochtitlan stands as one of the greatest cities in the world, home to nearly 200,000 souls. The Aztec Empire, under the rule of Moctezuma II, stretches from coast to coast, built on a foundation of military conquest and religious terror that demands constant human sacrifice to maintain cosmic balance. At the heart of this system stands Tlaloc, the rain god, whose favor determines whether crops flourish or fail, whether the empire eats or starves. But Tlaloc wasn't born evil, according to Aztec mythology. In the beginning, he was a benevolent deity who brought gentle rains and abundant harvests. It was betrayal that twisted him into a monster. His first wife, Xochiquetzal, the goddess of flowers and love, was stolen from him by the trickster god Tezcatlipoca. The betrayal drove Tlaloc into such rage that he began demanding increasingly horrific sacrifices, and children's tears became his favorite offering, their innocent suffering the only thing that could soothe his broken heart. The selection process that brought you here began months ago, during the dry season when the priests read omens in the smoke of sacred fires. They looked for children born under certain calendar signs, particularly those associated with water and rain. Your birth date, for water, marked you as especially sacred to Tlaloc, but it was your temperament that sealed your fate. You were known throughout your Kalpuli, your neighborhood, as a sensitive child who cried easily, at harsh words, at the sight of wounded animals, even at beautiful sunsets that moved your young heart. This emotional nature, which your parents had tried to temper, became the very quality that made you precious to the priests. The ceremony that claimed you took place in your family's modest home in the Tlatelolco district. Your father, Milintika, worked as a skilled feather artist, creating elaborate headdresses for nobles and warriors. Your mother, Malinali, wove textiles whose intricate patterns told stories of gods and heroes. They lived simple lives, offering prayers and tribute to the empire, never imagining their daughter would be chosen for such a terrible honor. When the priests arrived at your door, accompanied by Aztec officials in their distinctive feathered cloaks, your parents knew immediately why they had come. The lead priest, a gaunt man named Tlacael, whose skin bore the ritual scars of decades of auto-sacrifice, carried a jade box containing the sacred lots that had selected you. Your parents were given no choice in the matter. To refuse would have branded your entire family as enemies of the gods, subject to execution and eternal damnation. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of ritual preparation. Your body was purified through repeated sweat lodge ceremonies that left you weak and dizzy. Priestesses painted your face with sacred blue clay mixed with ground turquoise, marking you as Tlaloc's chosen. Your hair was braided with flowers, marigolds and water lilies that would remain fresh through supernatural means until the moment of sacrifice. You were dressed in the finest textiles your family could afford, a white huipil embroidered with rain clouds and water symbols, jade jewelry that clinked softly with every movement. But the physical preparations were nothing compared to the psychological conditioning that began immediately after your selection. The priests explained in voices that mixed kindness with absolute authority that you were no longer an ordinary child, but a sacred vessel chosen by Tlaloc himself. Your tears, they told you, had the power to bring rain that would save thousands of lives, make crops flourish, and maintain the cosmic balance that kept the world from ending. They painted your sacrifice not as death, but as transformation, claiming you would become one with the god himself, living forever in the paradise of Tlalocan, where it was always spring and children played in gardens of jade and gold. Yet despite their comforting words, you understood the truth with the clarity that sometimes comes to children facing unthinkable horror. Tomorrow, when the sun reached its zenith, you would be taken to the top of Tlaloc's temple, laid upon an obsidian altar, slick with the blood of previous victims, and have your still-beating heart cut from your chest with a ceremonial flint knife. Your body would then be thrown down the temple steps to join the thousands of other remains that fertilized the sacred precinct with their decay. The other children in the chamber understood this too, though none spoke of it directly. Instead, you communicated through shared glances, gentle touches, and whispered fragments of prayers taught by parents who would never see their children again. Nikali had stopped crying hours ago, exhausted by grief into a hollow-eyed silence that was somehow worse than his tears. Zianya clutched her obsidian figurine so tightly that it cut her palms, droplets of blood mixing with the sacred paint on her hands. As the night deepened, the sounds from outside the chamber grew more intense. Drums echoed across the city, their rhythm matching the heartbeat of the empire itself. Thousands of worshippers had gathered in the ceremonial plaza, their voices raised in hymns that praised Tlaloc's terrible magnificence. The smell of burning offerings, copal, rubber, and human blood drifted through the stone corridors, so thick you could taste it on your tongue. But something was changing in the world beyond Tenochtitlan. Something the priests couldn't yet see in their obsidian mirrors or jade scrying stones. Spanish conquistadors under Hernan Cortés were advancing toward the capital, bringing with them diseases, weapons, and a different kind of religious fanaticism that would soon collide with the Aztec worldview in an explosion of violence that would destroy both civilizations and create something entirely new. The irony was that your sacrifice intended to preserve the cosmic balance and ensure the empire's continuation, would take place just months before that same empire crumbled into dust. The gods you were dying for would soon be replaced by a different deity, one who also demanded blood, but preferred it to come from adult martyrs rather than children's hearts. The Spanish would condemn Aztec sacrifice as demonic barbarism while implementing their own systems of religious terror through the Inquisition and forced conversion. In your final hours, as you sat in that stone chamber surrounded by other doomed children, you represented something more than just a victim of religious extremism. You embodied the collision between different ways of understanding the sacred, the terrible prices that societies pay for cosmic insurance policies, and the eternal willingness of adults to sacrifice children's lives for abstract principles they claim are more important than human compassion. The priests who would kill you tomorrow weren't monsters in their own eyes. They were servants of a cosmic order that demanded regular feeding with innocent blood to prevent universal collapse. They genuinely believed that your death would save countless lives, that your tears would bring the rains that meant the difference between abundance and starvation for millions. In their worldview, letting you live would be the truly evil choice, a selfish decision that prioritized one child's life over the welfare of the entire world. Yet as you huddled in that chamber, watching Nikali rock back and forth in traumatized silence and Xianya's futile attempts to pray her way out of tomorrow's horror, the abstract logic of cosmic balance offered no comfort. You were still a child who wanted to see another sunrise, to hug your mother, to watch the butterflies that visited the flowers outside your family's home. The sophisticated theological arguments that justified your murder meant nothing to the part of you that simply wanted to live. The temple complex where you would die had been built over generations, each expansion adding new horrors to the architectural machinery of sacrifice. The main pyramid rose 200 feet above the ceremonial plaza, its steep steps designed to maximize the visual impact when victims' bodies tumbled down to the crowd below. At its peak stood the dual shrines of Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli, the war god, their walls permanently stained with the blood of thousands of previous offerings. But your sacrifice wouldn't take place at the main altar. Children chosen for Tlaloc received special treatment, killed at smaller shrines designed specifically for their murders. These chambers, carved into the pyramid's base, were decorated with murals showing children playing in underwater paradises, visual promises of the afterlife that awaited young victims. The altars themselves were sized for small bodies, with drainage channels carved to direct the flow of blood into sacred cenotes, where it would sink to the underworld and nourish the gods' eternal hunger. As dawn approached, bringing with it the final hours of your life, you could hear the city stirring around you. Merchants setting up stalls to sell food and crafts to the thousands of pilgrims who had come to witness the ceremony. Warriors checking their weapons before the ritual battles that would follow the sacrifices. Priests making final preparations, sharpening obsidian knives and arranging the flowers that would decorate the altars with beauty, even as they ran red with children's blood. The morning meal arrived with the sunrise. Corn cakes sweetened with honey, chocolate flavored with vanilla and chili, and fresh fruit that tasted like paradise in your mouth because you knew it would be the last food you ever ate. The priests encouraged you to eat well, explaining that Tlaloc preferred his victims to be strong and healthy when they joined him in the underworld. You managed a few bites before your stomach rebelled, the knowledge of what was coming making even the finest delicacies taste like ash. Then came the final preparations. Priestesses entered the chamber carrying jade green water in obsidian bowls, using it to wash your face and hands in ritualistic purification that felt more like preparation of a corpse than caring for a living child. They rebraided your hair with fresh flowers, marigolds whose orange petals would soon be splattered with red, water lilies that symbolized rebirth in the underwater paradise of Tlalocan. New jewelry was placed around your neck and wrists, jade pieces carved with images of rain clouds and water serpents that were supposed to help you navigate the journey to the god's realm. As the sun climbed higher, the sounds from outside grew more intense. Thousands of drums beat in synchronized rhythm, their voices echoing off the ceremonial buildings until the very air seemed to pulse with anticipation. Conch shell trumpets screamed across the lake, calling worshippers from throughout the valley to witness the renewal of the covenant between gods and men. But for you, huddled in that stone chamber with other condemned children, the sounds felt like the approach of doom itself. The moment you had dreaded finally arrived when the chamber door swung open and Tlakailel entered, accompanied by a dozen assistant priests dressed in the flayed skins of previous victims. Their appearance was designed to terrify, faces painted to resemble skulls, bodies decorated with jade and obsidian that caught the torchlight like captured stars. They moved with the confidence of men who had performed this ritual hundreds of times, their hands steady as they reached for you and the other children. Your last coherent memory as a free child was the feeling of adult hands lifting you from the stone floor, your small body suddenly weightless as you were carried toward the door that led to the altar and your appointment with Tlaloc's hunger. Behind you, Nikali finally found his voice again, screaming for his mother in a voice that echoed off the stone walls like the cry of a wounded animal. Zianya clutched her obsidian figurine so tightly that the sharp edges drew blood from her palms, droplets that fell to the floor like crimson tears. The story of what happened next has been preserved in Spanish chronicles and Aztec codices, though both sources struggle to capture the full horror of what they witnessed. Your death, and the deaths of dozens of other children that day, represented the climax of a religious system that had reached such extremes of ritual violence that it ultimately consumed itself. The gods who demanded so much blood would soon discover that their altars could be overturned, their temples burned, and their worshippers converted to new faiths at the point of Spanish swords. But your story, Itzel, doesn't end with your death on that obsidian altar. Your name, meaning rainbow, became a symbol of hope for the survivors of the conquest, a reminder that even in the darkest storms, colors of beauty can appear in the sky. The children who died with you in Tlaloc's temple became martyrs not to the rain god's hunger, but to humanity's eternal struggle between the demands of religious authority and the simple desire of the innocent to live and love and see another day. Tonight, somewhere in the world, another child sits alone and afraid, facing adults who claim that their suffering serves some higher purpose. The gods may have different names now, the altars may be built of different materials, but the willingness to sacrifice children for abstract principles remains hauntingly constant across cultures and centuries. As you close this chapter of forgotten history and return to your own life, remember that behind every statistic of historical violence were individual human beings with names, hopes, and the simple desire to see tomorrow's sunrise. Itzel and the other children who died on Tlaloc's altar deserved better than the world gave them. But their stories survive as testament to the resilience of human compassion even in humanity's darkest hours. What other forgotten voices from history do you think deserve to be remembered? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue exploring these hidden stories that connect us across time and space through our shared humanity.